Our investigations were what fruits could float in water and cope. Do it over. Now we're going to go for the black fruit. Oh, no. Wait, it's sinking.
Wait,
I think you'll pull it apart. Yeah, like wait, it's floating.
Wait, what?
It's floating. What? Well, I think we need to add more bobbing.
You do the blueberry, I'll do the apple. It is floating.
It's floating.
The ones that sank.
Floating.
These two sank. These two floated.
And that's floating.
And that's floating.
I wasn't that surprised because I knew the fizz would pop up the fruit because the fizz made it all pop out, and I thought, but I was a bit surprised by the water, but I found out that some of the little ones, the water got inside them and made it heavier, and they sunk.
I like seeing the results of my investigation.
It was an interesting investigation.
I love the big science.
Hello and welcome to the Winter Livestream 2023. My name's Roger and I am coming live from the Science Oxford Centre, and I'm looking forward to spending the next half an hour talking to you about one of my favourite science topics, the topic of food. I'm not here alone. I have got my able assistant Ian ready to come on and give us a wave. Thank you, Ian. And behind the scenes, we've also got Daniel and Sarah, who will be working all the technical wizardry to get this streamed into your schools and homes this afternoon. Now, before we started, we put a question up on the board for you. We asked you to have a little think and to post some comments in the chat. Why we eat. Now, I can see we've already got some really interesting comments. We've got one from Queensway Primary School here saying, to survive, to collect nutrients, to be healthy, to grow, to get protein and fat. That's incredible. Loads of great key words in there. You're absolutely right. And we'll see a few more comments coming in. To stay alive. Amazing. Without food, we would die within a few weeks. It's not quite as important as water, but absolutely to get some food so that we don't die. This is a common theme. Of course, we all need food to give us energy, to keep us healthy, to allow us to grow, all those important things. Now, food is eaten by me, for example, when I want to be sociable. Sometimes I sit down and I have a meal with my family or my friends. I like eating food partly because it's delicious. That's probably a good reason on its own. And sometimes we eat food just because it's a certain time of day. We get into a cycle where we have breakfast and then we have lunch and then we have our dinner or our tea. So we've had some fantastic comments already come in. But as well as getting that nutrients in, we need to think about what those nutrients are, what that nutrition is. And food contains things like fats, carbohydrates, proteins, as well as things like minerals and vitamins that our bodies can't make, but we still need. And I was thinking the other day, how do I know how much nutrition is in the food I'm eating? And I was eating my breakfast. I had a box of Cheerios on the table and I was looking at the back, and you've probably seen this yourselves. On the back of a box of cereal, you will see all of that really useful information written down for you. It tells you how much fat, carbohydrate, protein, fiber and salt is in your breakfast cereal, as well as how much energy you can get from eating it. On the front, sometimes we have a nice color-coded little symbol here, like we've got on the top there, that tells you how much of your daily allowance you need, you get from a portion of it, and it makes sure that you don't eat too much, because sometimes it's very easy to get carried away. Now, not all food comes in packaging. Not all food has those advice labels on the back. Some food, like my banana, my orange, and my apple here, are grown by nature, and they don't have that information clearly marked out on the front. So how do we know how much nutrition we can get from a banana, an apple, and an orange? Well, I'm going to give you a little clue. I'm going to light my Christmas candle here, and we're going to have a think about how we get nutritional information about food that doesn't come. Now, as I said, Ian's around, so you might notice him from time to time. Hang on, Ian. Well, what do you think you're doing? Hey, come on, Ian. Oh, my goodness. Well, as it happens, Ian's given us a little clue, because this candle was actually made of food. It looked like a real candle, but we would never advise eating real candles because they're not very tasty, and because they might make you ill. But Ian has got away with it because this candle was made of food. And actually, it's a really good clue as to how scientists work out how much nutrition there is in food. What they do is they burn them. So when you burn a food, it releases some energy in the form of heat, and we can work out how much of that is provided by the nutrition in the food. And we're going to have a go at this. We're going to try burning a couple of snacks and see if we can see if there's a difference between the amount of nutrition and the amount of heat we get from two different foods. So if we move our candle out of the way, thank you, Ian. I have chosen two snacks that I particularly like. On the left, I have got a What's It, and on your right, my left, we've got a What's It, and we've got a Brazil nut there. So I'm going to set fire to these. And while I'm doing this, don't bother putting it in the chat, but have a chat amongst yourselves. Which one do you think will burn best? Which one do you think will burn for the longest? And we'll see what happens. Let's get that one going first. I can hear it crackling. I can see smoke coming off already. Ooh, let's go a little bit longer. There we go. Oh, it's really going now. And then we've got, this is a Brazil nut, a type of nut. And I'm going to get that one going. There we go. Fantastic. Oh, it's not quite gone yet. Now that What's It has really taken off. It's producing a huge great flame. It's got lots of smoke, and oh, well, it didn't last very long. But the Brazil nut, although I lit it a little bit later, is really catching now. And it's that nutrition in those foods that is burning, that is giving off heat. So our What's It has carbohydrate and some fats in there. Our nut is full of fats and oils, and that's a really good source of energy. And it's that nutrition that our bodies take in and process. Now, I don't think we're going to sit there watching a Brazil nut burn for too long. So I'm going to ask Ian to move those out the way for me, because as you saw, it wasn't a simple process to get those foods to burn. So I thought we'd demonstrate what makes things burn by looking at another food, a favorite food of mine, and one that's particularly nice with pudding at this time of year. I was going to show you a bit of custard. Okay, so in here I've got some liquid custard. I'm going to tip it into my pot there. I'm going to try and fill that up near to the brim. There we go. And I thought we'd have a go at trying to burn custard. Now, it is a liquid. Ian, can I just pass you that? Thank you. So while we're doing this, have a think amongst yourselves. What's going to happen each time? So to start with, we're going to use a slightly hotter flame. I'm going to use a blowtorch this time. So it's a bit hotter than our lighter. And let's see what happens when we try and burn liquid custard. Oh, I can see some bubbling. I can hear it sizzling. Looks like it's maybe boiling on the surface there. Definitely going a bit black, but it's not really doing any more than that. I think all it's going to do is glow a little bit. So I'm going to turn it off. You can still, it's still sizzling in its tub there. So liquid custard has lots and lots of water in it, and that water stops the custard from being able to get hot enough to actually really go up in flames. Now, custard, I don't know how much you know about this, custard starts life off as a powder. So you mix powder with water, and I've got a pile of this powder right here. Thank you, Ian. I've got a pile of this custard powder, and we haven't added any water to this. So this is just custard powder on its own. So if we take the water out, I wonder if maybe we can get it hotter and allow it to burn that way. So let's get the blowtorch going again. There we go. Right, I'm going to see if I can get this custard powder to burn. Yes, it's doing a little bit better. It's certainly going black around the edges. There's a bit of a glow from time to time, but it's not really catching fire. So it's not quite as impressive as I want it to be. But, oh, we have got a little bit of smoke there. Now, that's because at the moment, the dry custard powder hasn't got enough oxygen from the air around it. It's just in a big pile, a bit like our blob of custard. So we've got one more trick. I'm going to transfer to a different camera this time, and we are going to have a go using this equipment to see if we can set fire to some custard powder. This time, the custard powder is in this funnel at the end. Attached to it, I've got a big pump, and in a moment, I am going to pump a load of air through the custard powder, blow a big cloud of custard powder into the sky around me, and we're going to see if we can get that to catch on fire. Okay, Ian's going to turn down the lights for us. I'm going to put on my safety specs because this is not something you should do at home. There we go. And I'm going to do a countdown. I'm just going to start my blowtorch first. Perhaps you'd like to join me in the countdown. Let's start at 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whoa, my goodness. I hope you all saw that. But if you didn't, we've got a little slow-mo recorded, and we'll show that to you right now. Fantastic. I hope you saw that in super slow-mo. Explosions always look fantastic in slow motion. Now, what we have done, as well as how to set fire to things and what nutrition is in food, we a bit of a mess. So I've got a bit of a job on my hands. I'm going to tidy this up. While I do that, I would like you to have a think about this question. What I'd like you to do is talk amongst yourselves and put your answers in the chat. And I'm particularly interested to know why you think those answers. So which drink is the healthiest out of milk, cola, juice, and water? Now, we're going to give you 2 or 3 minutes to have a chat and get your comments into the live chat while we tidy up here. So I'll see you back here very soon. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you've had fun discussing that question. I think we've got some, fantastic. We've got some comments in from Queensway Primary School. We think water is the healthiest because it hydrates you quicker. And we also think milk because it makes your bones healthy. Juice because it contains sugar. Fantastic. So all three of those come out as really healthy. And Melissa Gibson says water because, I missed that. And then milk because it has protein. Then we're back to water because it doesn't have anything in it. Is something that has nothing in it healthy? I wonder if we can discuss that a bit later on. So we're getting suggest that lots of different ones perhaps are healthy. Headington Prep think water because it doesn't have any sugar in it, but milk second. So perhaps water is the most healthy, milk is the second. Well, it's a really interesting topic, and really we have to think about what is healthy. Now, different people will need different things at different stages or different times in their lives. I think what we've all focused on is the fact that we need water, and without water, we are going to struggle. Without water, we would die in a few days, whereas with food, we can survive for a few weeks if we really need to. So water is essential, but all of these drinks contain water. Some of them also contain other things. So milk contains fats and proteins in there, which are brilliant as you're growing. Particularly when you're young, you drink lots of milk, either from your mother or from cows, and that helps you grow and develop, keeps your bones strong, as people have said. It's also important for things like teeth. But if we drink too much milk, we will get too much of those things. Juice contains lots of fruit sugars in there, which are fantastic if you're about to go out and run around a field. But if you're going to sit on the sofa and watch some TV, then maybe you don't want to drink too much of it because you'd have an excess of it. Now, even cola, no one's mentioned cola as being healthy, but cola does contain water. And if you were really thirsty, it's better to drink cola than to drink nothing. Cola's been made so that it tastes particularly nice. It's got fizzy bubbles to make it tingle on your tongue. And I would suggest that drinking a glass of Diet Cola with a balanced diet, with a healthy meal, is not going to cause you any trouble. But there are things in there that we do need to be careful of. So in summary, I would say all of them can be healthy. Some of them contain more than just water. All of them contain water, but it's about balancing them. It's about having them in the right proportions and not just having milk all the time, Diet Cola all the time, juice all the time, mixing it up. And obviously water is essential to keep us alive. So fantastic comments, guys. Really, really impressed. Now, we're going to move on and we're going to think about how do we get all of this nutrition from our drinks and our foods into our bodies? How does it get out of those large lumps and be used by our bodies? Now, I'm going to demonstrate this by modeling something called our digestive system, something you may have heard of before. And we're going to use some equipment to model this. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a plate of food. I'm going to pop this in so you can see what I have for lunch. I have got a cheese sandwich, wholemeal bread. I've got a banana, and I've got my favorite crisps again, a cheesy Wotsits, and I've also got a cup of coffee. That's my personal preference. And what we're going to do is we're going to put these into our mouths. The digestive system starts with our mouth. And to model our mouth, we are going to use a large beaker with its teeth on there. And to model the teeth, I've got a potato masher. So we're going to give it a good squish around in there. So what we're going to do to start off with is we're going to pop our food into our mouths. And I'm sure you all know this. You take big bites of it. So I'm going to tear the food apart with my teeth. And we're going to pop that into our mouths. So we're already breaking big pieces of food into smaller pieces of food. And that's, of course, very important. So there goes the cheese sandwich. Then I'm going to have all my crisps, my cheesy Wotsits. Let's tip those in one big go. And then finally, we're going to have a slightly healthier finish. We're going to have our banana. So I'm going to break that into a few small pieces as well. There we go. So I always tend to accompany my food with a drink. So I'm going to tip my coffee in there too. And the coffee will help get the food into a nice paste. But it's not the only thing we rely on in our mouths. We also have saliva. And I'm modeling that today with a little bit of blue liquid. And what saliva does is it's not just helping the food slide down through our digestive system, but it also starts the process of breaking that food down right as soon as it goes into your mouth. So your mouth has your teeth, and your saliva, which get that process really going. So let's have a go at really squishing that food. So it's like we're chewing on our sandwich, our crisps, and our banana. And I'm going to give it a really good squish down using my molars or my grinding teeth at the back of my mouth. I'm just going to move that around. Now, you wouldn't normally keep the food in your mouth for too long. You'd be taking bites and swallowing each one down. But for the process of this model, I am going to give it a good old mash. You can probably see it through the edge of the cylinder there. It's turning into a bit of a paste. So we have started our digestion. Now, Ian's going to bring me some more equipment on. I'm going to pop that in there. Ian, could I pass you those? Thank you very much. So our mouth now contains a big bolus. It's a kind of lump of food, and we're going to swallow that down the next part of our digestive system, which is a pipe called the esophagus. And we've got a funnel and a pipe here. It more or less sits about there in your body. And this pipe has muscles all the way down the side of it. And as the food goes down it, it squeezes the food down into the next part of your digestive system that we'll come to soon. It squeezes it down, which means if you were to eat upside down, standing on your head, the food would still go down your digestive system. It wouldn't come back out. It's allowing the food to travel. I wouldn't recommend eating while standing on your head, though. So Ian's going to hold our esophagus, and he's going to hold part of the next part of the digestive system as well, while I pour that food down the esophagus into the next bit. Let's watch it slop down. Try and make sure I don't miss, or we'll make a right mess. There we go. Fantastic. Thank you, Ian. I'm going to do a swap with you. If I take that, and you take those for me. Thank you very much. I'll keep the tray, please. Thank you. There we go. Wonderful. So we have now reached the stomach. And the stomach in our model is a bag, because that's kind of what it is. It is a bag full of all that mushed up food. It takes just 7 seconds for the food to go down the esophagus into the stomach, where it sits for another 1 or 2 hours, getting squeezed by more muscles. It squeezes it together, and it's those muscles that create your rumbly tummy. If you haven't got any food in there, it makes a kind of echoey noise as it moves things around, wanting the food to come in. And in the stomach, it also receives a few more liquids. So I'm going to add some stomach acid in the form of this green liquid. And stomach acid does a really important job. It kills some of the nasty germs that might be on your food. And it also sets up the environment for some other chemicals to really get going, breaking that food down into smaller pieces. These other chemicals are, in this case, a yellow liquid, but in reality, they're called enzymes. So they're produced by our stomach, and they work really well when they're in the presence. Don't know whether you can still hear me. Yes. Oh, sorry, I think we might have had a bit of flaky sound there. So our enzymes and acids are working on that food, squeezing it around for 2 hours in the stomach, making it into an even finer paste. And eventually, after that time in the stomach, it's ready for the food. It's time for the food to make the next part of its journey. And Ian's going to come on and model this for me. I'm just going to show people what this looks like. This is our small intestine. And our small intestine is actually really, really long. In your bodies, it's probably between 6 and 7 meters long. A big, long tube. That's about as wide as this classroom we're in, and possibly the room you're in too. It's called the small intestine because it's really narrow, but it's very, very long. And the walls of the small intestine are full of tiny microscopic holes, which allow the food to travel out into your bloodstream. So we're going to empty our stomach into our small intestine. I'm going to chop a little hole in there, and Ian's going to hold it very carefully. Thank you. Let me tip that in there. There we go. So our food goes into our small intestine. Ian's going to get rid of that for me. Thank you. And here we have our small intestine full of that juicy, loose food, full of water, full of enzymes, full of acid. And while it travels down the small intestine, which takes about 5 hours, it is losing those tiny parts of the food that we've broken down into the bloodstream. So the blood is then able to take that nutrition off around your body, takes it to your brain, takes it to your muscles, where it's really going to be used. So I'm giving this a good squeeze because I want as much nutrition to come out of this food as I can. And I'm going to lift up the tray to show you all that nutrition that's traveling into your blood. You can see it running around in there. And after 5 hours in our small intestine, we reach the final stage of our digestive system journey. And Ian's going to bring on, could you just fold that in half for me? That's it. And then half again. Thank you very much. This is a towel. And that's because the large intestine, which is where we now find our food, is actually designed to recover as much water from the food as it possibly can. The contents of the small intestine finishes up basically just being fiber, being the bits of the food that our bodies can't use. So it's fiber and water. And the body does not want to lose that water because it's really important to keep hydrated. So it's going to recover as much water from that food as it possibly can. And I'm modeling that today by squeezing our digestive system into a towel. So the towel is soaking all that water up and preventing it coming out of the other end of the body, which is where it would be lost. So after 1, maybe 2 days after you've eaten your food will now be sitting in the large intestine, which is about 1.5 meters long, but much wider than the small intestine. And it's forming into something that I'm sure you've heard of before. It's forming into a long, soft sausage. Yeah, you're right. It's formed into a poo. So we are going to model this by producing a potty, and we're going to move this food on into its last phase of its journey. I'm going to chop the end off our tights, and we're going to do a poo. Here we go. Let's squeeze and see what happens. Oh my goodness. Now, I'm not going to say this is pleasant, but at least it's not the real thing. It is just a model, but it looks quite realistic. Right, let's have a look. We'll have a look on the close-up camera. I'm going to move it over here. Hopefully you can see that. There it is. I've seen worse. We have our poo. 1 or 2 days after you've eaten a sandwich, some crisps and a banana, out it comes. And it's just that food, the bits of the food that we can't make use of, that's left behind into the toilet. Now, once again, we seem to have made a mess. This time I'm going to get Ian to do the tidying up while I pose you another question. We're going to put this up on the board for you. There we go. Right, we would like to know whose poos is whose. And we're particularly interested, once again, in finding out why you think that. So we have a picture of 4 different poos, and we've got one of those poos we think is a fox poo, one is a caterpillar poo, one is a pigeon poo, and one is a badger poo. And we want you to try and work out which is which and a really good reason why. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to try and work that out. Put your answers in the chat, and I'll see you back here in a moment or two. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you've had fun discussing that topic. It's a bit of a disgusting one, but next time you're out on a walk, maybe you can spot some of these. So I can see you've already sent in some lovely comments. We've got some answers there. We've got caterpillar, pigeon. Oh, I missed the rest of those. So this is the reason why, because of the size of them. Caterpillars eat leaves and they poo where they eat. Also, they're smaller. So that's Sarah who thought that A was a caterpillar poo. Ah, interesting use of the word latrine there. We might come onto that in a minute or two. So Sandhills have come up with the answers. A, caterpillar, pigeon, badger, and fox. Fantastic. I'm not going to go through all of those, but they'll come up on the screen. Now, I want to talk about how we might be able to tell this. So when looking at poo, the things to look for are the size, the shape, the color, and perhaps even the smell, if you can dare to. Those are all really good clues as to who has left a poo. And we're going to have a look at the answers in a minute. I don't know how many more comments. We've got a couple more just to go through. Let's have a look. Headings and prep think A is caterpillar, B is pigeon, and then we've got the brown and white, fantastic, and badger and fox, fantastic. Awesome. Interesting observations there too. So I'm going to ask Sarah to put the answers up for me. Fantastic. So well done to you if you got the caterpillar poo, which is indeed on a leaf that it has been munching away. You can see the holes there, and tiny poos probably come from a tiny animal like a caterpillar. Fantastic. Now, the caterpillar's eating leaves, so those poos contain the bits of the leaf that their digestive systems can't process, can't utilize. Fantastic. Now, pigeon was B. Absolutely right, those of you who got that. Now, pigeons are interesting as birds. They don't go around eating worms like a lot of birds do, but they're actually mostly herbivorous. So their poos, again, contain the leftover bits of plants that they can't digest. Now, what's also interesting about pigeons, if you've ever cleaned a car, you will probably have seen a pigeon poo on it almost straight away. And it often has a bit of a white liquid attached to it. And that is actually the pigeon's urine. It's the way the pigeon gets rid of its waste. So it poos and wheezes at the same time from the same place. So that's why pigeon poo often has a kind of green lump and then a white liquid patch next to it. So keep an eye out for that next time you're out and about. Now, I know C and D were foxing a few people, if you'll pardon the pun, because they are quite similar. Both badgers and foxes are omnivores. They live in the woodlands here, and they do both eat similar things. But badger poos are, as I think it was Sarah said, they are often left in latrines. And latrines are pits that they dig, and then they poop into those pits. And we can see on that picture there, 3 different poos that maybe 3 different badgers have done, all right next to each other. And because badgers are omnivores, they often eat lots of different food when it's available, and their poos can look very different as a result of it. Sometimes their poos have seeds and nuts in them. Sometimes they're left over from the worms and the snails they've been eating. Sometimes there's even fur from the animal they might have managed to catch that night. And finally, we've got the fox poo. And a very good telltale sign that a poo is a fox poo is the smell, because it's really pungent. It really whiffs. And we can see in that particular poo, we can see some white bits and certainly some fur in there, and it's ending in a sort of taper, which is where it's left the body. And those white bits are probably bits of bone, but don't worry if you didn't. There's still lots to learn. So as I said before, we can tell a lot about who left a poo by what it looks like. But we can also have a good poke around in them too, to see if we can work out what's inside them. Now, Ian found this poo at the Science Oxford Centre recently. I'm going to put it on the screen because I thought we might be able to, there we go, we might be able to have a look in this poo. Now, I've got my gloves on, as you've seen. Perhaps we can look in this poo and see if we can work out what animal left this behind. So it's a good job you can't smell this, but let's have a quick look in here. We've got, it's quite soft. You can probably see from the size of my hands, it's not a small poo. And if I break it apart, you can see, I can see some sort of nuts in there, I think. And there looks like some fruit, perhaps. It looks like, to me, this poo has been made by something that's eaten, just nuts, plants, no bits of animal or bits of bone in there. Now, I'm just going to get a slightly closer look. Just going to give it a bit of a smell. Interesting. Ian, I think you may be playing a trick on us. Just. Oh, you know what? That's not half bad. Ian, you've done a great job of that. It looks like It looks like there's some sultanas, some biscuit. I think he's made this poo out of chocolate. But I would advise, don't eat poos just in case. I know what I'm doing. Right, guys, I'm afraid we have nearly come to the end of our show. I've got a bit of a mouthful of food here, but I want to recap what we've learned today. We've been looking at food. We've been looking at what we get from food and why we eat it. We then had a look at how we can burn food and how we can burn food really spectacularly. And then finally, we looked at what happens when we put food in our mouth, what happens to it in our bodies so that we can get the most out of it, and what comes out at the other end. This has been a fantastic experience for me. I hope you've enjoyed it. And we've got one last question we'd like to ask you. Ian's got something I want to show you here. This is a fossilized poo. This poo was made in the times of the dinosaurs, millions of years ago. And what happens to fossilized poo is it gets squashed down by rocks and heat and pressure, and it turns into a rock itself. So if you've ever come to the Science Oxford Centre, you might have seen this poo. You can touch it in one of our exhibits called Guess What? And you can see it for yourself. So keep an eye on that if you do come in. So my question for you is, where does all the poo go? Not all poo turns into rocks and fossils. So where does all the poo that we produce and all the animals in the world produce, where does it all go? Have a chat amongst yourselves and send us your ideas in to schools@scienceoxford.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter. And while you're there, if you enjoy science, and who doesn't, we'd like you to think about entering the big science event. There's lots of information on our website. Enter that, do your own science experiment at home, and we'd love to see you next year at some point. So you can see all your schools scrolling along the bottom there. I'm not going to read them all out because you can probably see those. And we'd love you to come back this time next year, 2024, and we'll see you for the winter live stream next year. See you sometime soon.